Well, let's return now to the war in Ukraine. As the country marks its Independence Day, King Charles and world leaders have sent messages of support to President Zelenskyy to mark 34 years since the nation declared independence from the Soviet Union. Well, I'm pleased to say joining us now is Britain's first National Security Advisor. It's Lord Peter Ricketts. Very good morning to you, sir.
Good morning.
You have said in the past that by invading Ukraine, Putin actually enlarged NATO. Looking back over these last 3 years, what's your sense now?
I think it's important to remember that. I mean, we get reports that the Russians are gradually making progress on the ground in Ukraine. But if you look at the big picture, they've really lost badly already, because one of the things they did not want was more NATO closer to Russia. Well, they've got Finland and Sweden in NATO now. They would never have joined if it hadn't been for the war. And they've also got new determination by the Europeans to up their spending on defense, to take on more responsibility and to stand with Ukraine. So I think in the big picture, Russia has in an important sense already lost, and Ukraine is now going to be a pro-Western democratic country, for the long term. Of course, we've got all kinds of problems in getting from here to there, but I think it's worth remembering that when often the news from Ukraine can be bleak, and especially on this National Day of the country.
So having said that, Lord Ricketts, do you believe that Putin really miscalculated?
Oh, yes, I do. Absolutely. I mean, there's talk now the Russians have had 1 million casualties, killed and wounded. Of course, Ukraine has suffered hundreds of thousands as well. And he's achieved none of his objectives. And indeed, as I say, I think he's probably created a pro-Western Ukraine. So, yes, I think he's miscalculated badly. It was his war, his obsession to try and wipe Ukraine off the map, to stop it being an independent sovereign country. Now he's faced with a more united NATO, Europe determined to defend itself and Ukraine. And we can only have enormous admiration, I think, today for the stamina and the resilience of the civilians of Ukraine who've been under a kind of blitz attack on their towns and villages for 3.5 years. How they've survived, I don't know, but they're still up for defending their freedom. And it's absolutely crucial. Countries like the UK should give them what is needed to do that.
And what did you make of President Zelenskyy's very recent meeting at the Oval Office, of course, flanked by European leaders? Did you think that was the right step or just perhaps theatre?
No, I think it was more than theatre. Of course, it came after that meeting between Trump and Putin in Alaska, where Trump seemed to swing towards the Russian view of events and to be accepting the Russian narrative that there's got to be a long, complicated negotiation for some sort of wider peace deal. I think that meeting in the Oval Office, first of all, was far better than the awful car crash we had in March when Zelenskyy was in the Oval Office. And I think the fact that the European leaders got on their planes at very short notice, were there to show him solidarity, helped to ensure that was a much more friendly, respectful, productive meeting with Trump. And then there was the collective meeting with the Europeans as well. However, I mean, Trump really tends to swing towards the view of the person he's talked to most recently. So right now, he seems to be back accepting that he has to stand with Ukraine, help the Europeans to defend Ukraine, but we can't guarantee that that will stay the case. And it's still possible that Trump will decide to walk away and leave Ukraine to fight Russia, in which case the Europeans have just got to do even more to support the Ukrainians in their fight. At the end of the day, Ukraine coming out of this stronger and independent is part of Europe's security as well. So that's why we need to go on standing behind Ukraine, even if the Americans decide they've tried to make peace, they've failed, and Trump walks away.
And Lord Ricketts, you have raised the very important question of these so-called European security guarantees in Ukraine and what they actually mean and whether, in fact, they could deter Putin in the future.
I think it's really important that we understand what they really mean. Of course, we all want to support Ukraine, but security guarantees could mean, you're saying, we will be with you, and if Russia attacks Ukraine again after a settlement, we will go to war with Russia on your behalf. If that's what they mean, then I think Western politicians have got to explain that really carefully to the British public, the British Parliament and European parliaments as well, because I'm not sure that people understand that that is a possibility. If security guarantees means we undertake, we will stand with you, we will support you, we will give you the weapons you need, the economic support, we'll help you train the army. But at the end of the day, we're not saying that we're going to go to war to support Ukraine. That's another thing. Of course, the Ukrainians would like to be sure that European countries would be behind them if they were again attacked by Russia. But that's a very, very serious commitment to take on. The best way of giving them that guarantee would be to bring them into NATO. And I'd strongly support doing that. I know President Trump says he's not prepared to support that. It won't happen in his presidency. It's not going to happen soon. But if Ukraine has earned anything through these 3.5 years, it's the right to decide their own future, their own security. And then joining NATO, one day joining the European Union, would be the best way to give them that security guarantee that all their Western allies stand firmly behind them.
Lord Ricketts, we will leave it there, but a great pleasure to talk to you this morning. Thank you.
Thank you.